I never thought I'd be the girl to say this, but here I am, heart shattered, trust broken. It's funny, isn't it? How one moment can turn your entire world upside down. That moment for me, finding those videos. God, even thinking about it makes my stomach twist. I was at Lara's, my supposed best friend since forever, celebrating her brother's 22nd birthday. The house was buzzing with people, laughter echoing off the walls, drinks flowing like there was no tomorrow. And me? I was floating through it all, tipsy and carefree, until I wasn't. Laura had disappeared outside, mingling or whatever, and well, I decided it was selfie time. Her phone was lying around, and we always shared everything, so I didn't even hesitate. A few goofy shots later, I had this brilliant idea to send them to myself, for memories. That's when everything changed. Typing in my name, I paused. Ethan's name popped up just below mine. Why? Why would my boyfriend and my best friend be texting? Curiosity morphed into suspicion, morphed into action. I clicked on his name, my heart racing, and that's when I saw them. For videos, thumbnails glaring back at me with a story I wasn't prepared to read. The first video was enough to burn every memory of us to ashes. Ethan, blindfolded, and Laura, very much not, in a way that screamed betrayal. They were intimate, to put it mildly. Each video escalated, their actions a stark contrast to the love and trust one thought we shared. I felt like I was outside my body, watching someone else's life implode. The room spun, my heart pounded, and I had to get out. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. I left the party without a word to anyone, especially not Laura. Ethan's been calling, voicemails piling up with him crying, begging for a chance to explain. But what's there to explain? The videos spoke volumes, volumes of lies and deceit. And Laura? She's been radio silent. Guilt, maybe? Or just indifference? Hard to tell with the backstabber. Now I'm here, sitting in my room, replaying that night over and over. The betrayal by the two people I trusted most has left me reeling, unsure of how to move forward or if I even want to confront them. Part of me wants to scream, to make them feel a fraction of this pain, but another part wonders if silence is the best revenge. What do you do when your world crumbles? When the two people you loved and trusted the most leave you questioning everything? I guess I'm about to find out. The night was supposed to be simple. Can you give Laura a ride home? I asked Ethan, my voice muffled by the phone and the sounds of the bustling cafe where I worked. It was just a favor, nothing more. Ethan, always the charmer, agreed without a second thought. Of course, babe, no problem at all, he assured me, his voice a smooth balm to my frazzled nerves. Little did I know, that ride would mark the beginning of the end. I was pulling an all-nighter at the cafe, the kind of shift that leaves you questioning your life choices. Meanwhile, Laura was out, living it up at a graduation party. She'd been my rock since we were kids, but that night, she became something else entirely. When I finally got a break, my phone lit up with a message from Ethan. Lara's home safe. Heading back to our place now. Relief washed over me, quickly followed by exhaustion. I trusted Ethan implicitly, and Laura was like the sister I never had. It never crossed my mind to doubt either of them. But then, things started to shift. Lara's texts became more frequent, her questions about Ethan more pointed. How's Ethan doing? He's such a sweetheart for giving me a ride. Her words, innocent on the surface, began to carry a weight that I couldn't shake off. And Ethan? He just laughed it off, his usual easygoing self, oblivious to the storm brewing on the horizon. The first seeds of doubt were planted the next time we all hung out together. Laura, who was always more jeans and a t-shirt than anything else, showed up in a dress that left little to the imagination. She clung to Ethan's every word, laughing a little too loudly at his jokes, her eyes lingering on him a little too long. It was subtle, but undeniable. Something had shifted in the dynamics of our trio, and I found myself on the outside looking in. I tried to brush it off, to convince myself that I was reading too much into it. After all, they were just being friendly, right? But the nagging feeling in the pit of my stomach wouldn't go away. It was like watching a car crash in slow motion. You know what's coming, but you're powerless to stop it. Ethan? I found myself asking one night, the words slipping out before I could think better of it. Is everything okay with you and Laura? His response was immediate, a perfect blend of confusion and concern. Of course, babe. Why wouldn't it be? He pulled me close, his embrace meant to reassure, but the seeds of doubt had already taken root, growing with every passing day. As I lay in his arms that night, the silence between us spoke volumes. The affair might not have been out in the open yet, but the foundation of trust we'd built was starting to crumble. And with each passing moment, I felt myself slipping further away from the two people I loved most, caught in a web of betrayal that I never saw coming. The moment I thought about confronting them, my heart raced like it was trying to beat its way out of my chest. The idea alone felt like stepping off a cliff. Ethan and Laura, the two pillars of my world, suddenly seemed like strangers. Am I just being paranoid? I whispered to the empty room, half hoping for an answer that never came. Ethan's behavior didn't help. If anything, it only tangled my thoughts further. He was the same loving, attentive boyfriend he'd always been, maybe even more so. Flowers, just because. Surprise dinners, his warmth enveloping me in a way that almost made me forget the storm clouds gathering in my mind. Everything okay, Mia, his voice, laced with genuine concern, would pull me back from the edge every time I neared it. You've seemed a bit off lately. How could I tell him what was swirling in my head? That every laugh shared with Laura felt like a knife twisting in my back. And Laura, God, Laura. She crossed lines I didn't even know we had, her questions about Ethan veering from curious to invasive. How did Ethan react to that story you told him? He's got such a great laugh. Comments that once would have seemed innocuous now felt loaded, each one chipping away at my resolve. Their closeness was no longer a figment of my imagination. The way she sought him out, the energy between them, it was palpable, undeniable. Yet every time I steeled myself to confront them, to demand answers, I'd falter. Fear of shattering the fragile peace held me back, the peace that, deep down, I knew was already fractured. The tension became a constant companion, whispering doubts in my ear, painting my thoughts with suspicion. Mia, you're just overthinking things, I'd tell myself, trying to brush away the unease that clung to me like a second skin. But the harder I tried to ignore it, the louder it became. One evening, as I watched Ethan and Laura laughing together over something trivial, something inside me snapped. The laughter wasn't for me. I was on the outside looking in on a connection that had somehow shifted away from our trio, excluding me, isolating me. I needed to talk to someone, anyone who could offer perspective without the emotional turmoil clouding my judgment. My mom, always my sounding board, answered on the first ring. Honey, what's wrong? She asked, her voice a soothing balm. Pouring out my fears and observations felt like releasing a valve, the pressure within easing slightly as I spoke. Mia, listen to me, she said, her tone firm yet gentle. Trust your gut. But remember, accusations need solid ground. Observe, reflect, and then act. Don't let fear make decisions for you. Her words, wise as always, gave me pause. Was I ready to face the potential truth, or was the comfort of ignorance easier to bear? The answer, much like my heart at that moment, was fragmented. As days turned into weeks, the dance continued. Ethan's affection became my anchor, Lara's boldness the storm that threatened to pull me under. The confrontation loomed large, an inevitable crossroads I wasn't sure I had the strength to face. Yet, in the silence of the night, with only my thoughts for company, I realized something had to give. The truth, no matter how painful, was better than the limbo of doubt. I resolved to find my moment, to confront the storm head on. Little did I know, the eye of that storm was closer than I ever imagined. The air was thick with celebration, laughter weaving through the crowded backyard as I navigated my way through familiar faces, all gathered for Lara's brother's birthday bash. It was one of those nights where everything felt just right, or so I thought. Little did I know, my world was about to come crashing down in the most unexpected way. I remember feeling light, almost giddy, as I made my way inside Lara's house to escape the chill. The warmth of the interior hit me, a welcome embrace from the crisp night air. That's when I spotted Lara's phone, casually left on the kitchen counter among a clutter of party debris. A harmless idea struck me: why not take a few drunken selfies for laughs? We did it all the time, a silly tradition that never seemed to grow old. Flicking through the camera roll to find my latest series of goofy faces, I noticed the messaging app open in the background. An innocent glance turned into a curious peek, and that's when I saw Ethan's name, popping up in a way it had no right to. My heartbeat accelerated, a mix of confusion and a creeping dread taking hold as I tapped on his name, driven by a force I couldn't resist. The screen loaded, and suddenly, I wasn't in Lara's kitchen anymore. I was somewhere far off, a place where trust and love went to die. Videos, 4 of them, each a knife twisting deeper into my heart. My fingers trembled as I pressed play, each second unraveling the life I thought I knew. The first video was a blow I couldn't have prepared for. Ethan, my Ethan, with Lara in a way he was only supposed to be with me. Blindfolded, vulnerable, and completely unaware I would ever witness this. Their laughter, touches, the intimacy of their betrayal, it was all there, laid bare for my disbelieving eyes. I watched, frozen, as each video descended further into a nightmare. There they were, the two people I trusted most in the world, sharing moments meant for us, for me and Ethan. The realization hit me like a physical force, tears blurring my vision as the final video ended. The room spun around me, the sounds of the party outside a distant, mocking echo. I felt sick, heartbroken, and utterly betrayed. How? Why? Questions spiraled through my mind, but deep down, I knew the answers wouldn't change the raw, aching wound inside. I left the phone where it lay, a Pandora's box of shattered illusions. The urge to confront them, to scream and demand explanations, surged within me. Yet, my feet carried me away, out of Lara's house, away from the scene of my world's quiet collapse. The night air no longer felt crisp, it was cold, a chill that matched the sudden ice in my veins. As I walked, the images played on a loop in my mind, a cruel highlight reel of betrayal. Ethan's and Lara's laughter echoed in my ears, a soundtrack to the unraveling of my trust. I knew then, nothing would ever be the same. The unexpected twist in my story wasn't just a revelation, it was a turning point, a moment that redefined everything I thought I knew about love, friendship, and trust. The moment I stepped out of Lara's house, the cool night air felt like a slap to my face, a harsh contrast to the storm of emotions raging inside me. My phone buzzed incessantly, a relentless reminder of the reality I was desperately trying to escape. It was Ethan, of course. His name lit up my screen over and over, each call a stab of betrayal. I didn't need to hear his voice to know what he would say. The apologies, the explanations, the desperate pleas for understanding, they were all meaningless. How could words undo what I had seen? How could they stitch back together the trust that had been so carelessly ripped apart? I took a deep breath, the decision crystallizing in my mind with a cold, hard finality. Blocking them was almost cathartic. Each button pressed a step towards severing the ties that bound me to the pain. Ethan, Laura, they were parts of my life that I needed to cut out, malignant growths that had hidden their toxicity until now. The walk home was a blur, my thoughts a tangled mess of anger, disbelief, and an overwhelming sense of loss. By the time I reached my apartment, my phone was flooded with voicemails from Ethan. Part of me, a very small part, wanted to listen, to let his words wash over me in a wave of self-torture. But I resisted. There was nothing he could say that would change the images burned into my memory. Ethan again, I muttered to myself, deleting another voicemail unheard. His desperation was palpable, even through the digital distance I had put between us. Mia, please, just let me explain. It's not what it looks like. I swear to you, I didn't know she was filming. Please, babe, we need to talk about this. His words, even unheard, were like echoes in my mind. Could it be true? Did it even matter? The betrayal wasn't just in the act caught on camera, it was in the lies, the secrecy, and the fact that it happened at all. The apartment felt empty, colder somehow, as if the shadows held whispers of the love and trust that had once filled its corners. I sank onto the couch, the silence oppressive, the solitude a stark reminder of the gaping hole Ethan and Lara's actions had torn in my life. In that moment, the urge to confront Ethan, to scream and cry and make him understand the depth of the pain he had caused, was overwhelming. But what would it achieve? The damage was done, the trust shattered beyond repair. No, this was a wound that words could not heal. The night dragged on, each tick of the clock a reminder of the agonizing limbo I found myself in. To confront or to retreat, to seek answers or to accept the painful truth without them. These were questions I couldn't answer, not yet. For now, the only thing I could do was navigate the immediate aftermath of the betrayal, one agonizing step at a time. As dawn crept through the curtains, casting a soft light on the remnants of a life I thought I knew, I realized that this was just the beginning. The road ahead was uncertain, fraught with pain, and the daunting task of rebuilding myself from the ashes of my shattered trust. But it was a road I would have to walk, one way or another. The second the idea took root, it was like a wildfire in my veins, consuming the remnants of the hurt and betrayal with a fierce, unyielding intensity. I wasn't going to let them get away with it, not without facing the consequences of their actions. Direct confrontation? No. That would be too easy, too quick. They deserved more. They deserved to feel a fraction of the pain they'd inflicted on me. I spent the night plotting, my mind racing with possibilities until it clicked, the perfect form of revenge. Exposing them, letting everyone see them for who they really were, felt like the only way to strip them of the facade they'd so carefully constructed. The videos were damning evidence, impossible to deny or explain away. I worked methodically, my actions fueled by a cold, detached resolve. Creating anonymous email accounts felt like donning a mask, a necessary shield to hide behind as I prepared to unleash the storm. The videos, once a source of unimaginable pain, were now my weapons, and I wielded them with a precision that surprised even myself. The emails were crafted with care, each word a calculated strike meant to maximize the impact. To Ethan's family, to Lara's, to our friends who'd unknowingly been complicit in their secret, no one was spared. The send button was pressed not once, but several times, each click a step towards my liberation from the agony they'd cause. I imagined the fallout, the shock and horror that would ripple through our circle as the truth came to light. There would be no place for them to hide, no shadows deep enough to conceal the depth of their betrayal. Ethan and Laura, exposed for all to see, their perfect images shattered beyond repair. As the reality of what I'd done began to sink in, a twisted satisfaction took hold. It wasn't joy, far from it, but it was a start, a small flicker of power in the vast darkness they'd left me in. I waited, the silence of the early hours a stark contrast to the chaos I knew was unfolding in the digital realm. My phone remained silent, a testament to the anonymity of my revenge. Yet, I could almost hear the whispers, the shocked gasps, and the inevitable fallout. Ethan and Laura, once inseparable, would now be united in disgrace, their betrayal laid bare for all to see. This wasn't forgiveness, nor was it a path to healing. But in that moment, it was enough. Enough to give me a sense of control, a brief respite from the crushing weight of my shattered trust. As dawn broke, casting a soft light on the remnants of my old life, I knew that nothing would ever be the same. But maybe, just maybe, I could start to rebuild, piece by fragile piece, in the aftermath of the storm I'd unleashed. The silence of the morning after was deafening, each tick of the clock a heavy, echoing reminder of the storm I had unleashed. The night before, my fingers had danced across my phone with a single-minded purpose, sending those videos into the digital ether. It was a calculated move, cold and precise, aimed at exposing the betrayal that had torn my world apart. Now, as dawn broke, the reality of what I had done began to settle in, heavy and inescapable. My phone buzzed relentlessly, a constant barrage of messages and notifications. The digital world was ablaze with the scandal I had ignited. Ethan and Laura, once pillars of my life, were now the epicenter of a social earthquake, their reputations crumbling under the weight of their actions. I had envisioned this moment, played it over in my mind as a scene of triumphant justice. But as I scrolled through the messages, the expected surge of satisfaction eluded me. Instead, a hollow emptiness gnawed at my insides, a realization that no amount of revenge could undo the pain or fill the void left by their betrayal. The opportunity for confrontation came unexpectedly at a gathering of mutual friends. The room was thick with tension, whispers darting through the air like arrows, each glance heavy with unspoken words. Ethan and Laura stood together, isolated, their eyes searching the room until they found mine. The moment was charged, a crackling anticipation of the inevitable clash. Ethan stepped forward, his face a mask of regret. "Mia, please, can we talk?" His voice was low, tinged with a desperation that might have once moved me. Laura stood by his side, her eyes downcast, a silent plea hanging between us. The words I had rehearsed for so long suddenly felt hollow. "There's nothing left to say," I responded, my voice steady but devoid of warmth. "You both made your choices, and now you have to live with them." The finality in my tone left no room for arguments or excuses. Turning my back on them, I walked away, leaving their apologies unacknowledged. It was a moment of closure, but not the kind I had imagined. There was no sense of victory, no triumphant exit, just a deep, aching sadness for what had been lost. In the days that followed, the fallout from the public exposure was impossible to ignore. Ethan's friendships deteriorated, his social circle shrinking as the reality of his actions set in. Laura faced a similar fate, her once vibrant presence now a shadow, tainted by the choices she had made. As I watched from a distance, the consequences of my revenge unfolding, a bitter truth settled in my heart. The destruction of their social lives, the isolation they faced, it didn't bring me peace. Instead, it served as a constant reminder of the betrayal, a wound that refused to heal. In the quiet moments, when the noise of the world faded into the background, I was forced to confront the scars that the betrayal had left on my soul. Trust, once given so freely, now felt like a luxury I could no longer afford. The walls I had built around my heart were higher, stronger, a fortress to protect me from the pain of betrayal. The journey from love to betrayal, from betrayal to revenge, had brought me to this place, a place of reflection, where the cost of my actions lay bare before me. Despite the successful revenge, satisfaction remained an elusive shadow, a reminder that some wounds run too deep to be healed by retribution alone. In the end, the downfall of Ethan and Laura was not a story of victory. It was a tale of loss, a cautionary reminder of the fragility of trust and the price of vengeance. As I moved forward, the lessons of this chapter etched deep in my heart. I knew the road to healing would be long and uncertain. But it was a road I was ready to walk, one step at a time, in search of a peace that revenge could never bring. The morning light crept through the curtains, casting a soft glow across the room, illuminating a new chapter in my life. The past few months had been a whirlwind of emotions, a tumultuous journey through betrayal, pain, and ultimately, growth. As I sat at my desk, surrounded by textbooks and notes, I couldn't help but reflect on how far I'd come. My studies and part-time job had become my sanctuary, a place where I could lose myself in routine and responsibility, away from the chaos that had once consumed my life. Each day was a step forward, a testament to my resilience. I had learned to guard my heart, to see the red flags I had once so naively ignored. It was a cautious dance, one where I was constantly aware of the shadows of my past. Ethan's attempts to reach out had been a steady background noise, a reminder of the life I had left behind. His messages, filled with regret and pleas for forgiveness, went unanswered. It wasn't out of spite, but rather a necessary step towards healing. I had moved on, leaving him to grapple with the consequences of his actions. It was a chapter closed, a lesson learned. Lara's fate was a mirror to the consequences of betrayal. The vibrant, carefree friend I once knew had become a shadow of her former self, isolated by the very actions she thought she could hide. The backlash was swift, a social exile that left her grappling with guilt and loneliness. It pained me to see her fall so far, but it was a path she had chosen, a stark reminder of the fragile nature of trust. Despite the scars, the pain had carved a path to new beginnings. My world, once so narrowly focused on Ethan and Laura, had gradually expanded, welcoming new faces, new friendships. It was a cautious process, each new connection forged with a wisdom born from betrayal. Trust was no longer given freely, it was earned, a precious commodity that I guarded with vigilance. The final lesson, the silver lining in the stormy clouds of my past, was a profound understanding of my worth. Betrayal, while a bitter pill to swallow, had taught me the value of self-respect, the importance of setting boundaries, and the necessity of walking away from those who no longer served my best interests. It was a painful journey, but one that had ultimately led me to a place of strength and empowerment. As I turned my attention back to my studies, the noise of the world outside fading into a distant hum, I realized that the betrayal, though a defining moment, was no longer the anchor it had once been. It was a part of my story, but not the entirety of it. I had emerged from the darkness, not unscathed, but stronger, wiser, and more resilient. The road ahead was uncertain, filled with its own challenges and triumphs, but I faced it with a newfound confidence. The lessons of the past, while hard-earned, had equipped me with the tools to navigate the complexities of life with grace and determination. Betrayal had broken me, but in its wake, I had discovered an unshakable sense of self, a compass by which to steer my future. And so, with a deep breath, I embraced the day, ready for whatever lay ahead, secure in the knowledge that I was no longer the person I had once been. I was stronger, wiser, and infinitely more capable of facing the world on my own terms. The final lesson had been learned, and with it, The car ride home was awful. Mark's relentless questions about my disappearance, laced with thinly veiled accusations, chipped away at my carefully constructed composure. And then, the cherry on top, Sandra moved in. Temporarily, Mark insisted while she finds her feet. Ah, like that woman has ever needed help finding her feet. She's got stiletto heels, and she's not afraid to stab you in the back. Every nerve in my body is on fire. Mark has the kids upstairs, playing the devoted dad after days of stony silence. Sandra glares at me from the kitchen, supervising dinner with military precision. You feeling better, Allison? It sounds like a concern, but it drips with sarcasm. Just a little overwhelmed, I manage. It's the closest I can get to the truth. That my entire world is collapsing. And these two are the architects of my destruction. Jake's been texting nonstop. He's worried, but there's a hint of desperation in his messages now. Wants to meet. Says it's urgent. I can't risk it. Mark's on high alert, and Sandra's probably got hidden cameras in every corner of this damn house. The stifling normalcy of dinner is torture. Sandra's passive-aggressive comments about family supporting each other make my skin crawl. Mark offers empty platitudes about therapy, about giving our marriage one more shot. I want to scream. Doesn't he know he's the one who broke it all? Not just with the affair, but with the lies, the shady deals. That night, I lie awake, staring at the ceiling. I need a plan. I don't even know who the enemy is anymore. Sure, Sandra hates my guts. But is she behind the blackmail? Or is this all about Mark's tangled web of deceit? And how did Jake get pulled into this whole mess? I feel a flash of anger. At Jake for the recklessness of our affair. At Mark for being the reason I even looked elsewhere. But mostly, the rage burns inward. How did I become so blind, so complicit in my own misery? The blackmail emails haven't stopped. They've changed tone though. It's less about exposing me to Mark. More about the damage those revelations would cause him. Threats about financial irregularities. Hinting at his business dealings. So this isn't some jealous lover or scorned ex-employee. It's someone who knows exactly how to destroy him. Is that my out? I almost laugh. The wife. The scorned one. Becoming the unlikely savior. Exposing Mark's shady secrets might ruin me as well, but honestly, there's not much left to ruin. It's a risky game, and I'm already in way over my head. I desperately need an ally. Someone I trust with my life. My gut tells me it's not Beth. Not anymore. She means well, but she's too loyal. Too quick to offer the practical solution. This mess needs something more drastic. Grace, the private investigator. She's sharp. Cynical. She'll get the kind of twisted satisfaction I need out of all this. The question is, can I trust her? She knows all my dirty laundry. Holds the evidence right in her hands. If I played this wrong, the kids. My heart aches just thinking about them. How the hell do I protect them when their own father, their own grandmother, are the ones tearing our world apart? I'm their mother. I'm supposed to keep them safe, but what if I make it worse? Sleep is impossible. My mind spins in circles, every scenario ending in disaster. I need clarity, a decision. And then it hits me. Jake. He was there at the beginning. He has a stake in this, whether he admits it or not. Yes, he messed up big time, but if there's one person who understands this level of desperation, it's him. I glance at the clock. It's past 2 a.m. Screw it. I slip out of bed, careful not to wake Mark, and grab my phone. My fingers tremble slightly as I type out the message I've been avoiding. We need to talk. Tomorrow. It's life or death. My heart thuds in my ears as I stare at the computer screen. The sender is masked behind a string of random numbers and letters, yet their intent is crystal clear. It's confirmation. My tormentor knows about Jake. They know everything. I sit motionless, paralyzed by a strange mix of fear and morbid curiosity. Should I open it? Is it another twisted trap filled with photos and accusations to ensure my complete devastation? A wave of nausea hits. Maybe ignorance would have been better. But now I need to know exactly what I'm facing. My finger hovers over the mouse. Do it. A dark voice whispers insidiously. Don't be a coward. My pulse quickens as I click. The email is short, sinister. No graphic evidence of my affair, just meticulously detailed accusations. Dates and times of my rendezvous with Jake. Descriptions of our usual meeting spots. There's even an unsettling mention of the tattoo on his shoulder. The one I foolishly confided in him about. This isn't the work of an amateur. Then a veiled threat. They promise to reveal all to Mark, but only as a last resort. The implication is clear. Cooperate or face total destruction. But cooperate? How? What the hell do they want from me? Money? No, that feels too simple. This person, whoever they are, enjoys their cruelty. It's about power, control. And they have it all. I'm their puppet now, and I don't even understand the play. A chilling thought strikes. What if they don't reveal the affair? What if they set Mark up somehow, pin a crime on him? The blackmail emails hinted at Mark's shady business dealings. Could this be an elaborate revenge scheme? One where I'm just collateral damage? My phone bursts to life. It's Jake. Relief washes over me for a second. And then I remember the urgency of his earlier message. His voice is a panicked rush when I answer. Barely a greeting. Someone reached out to my brother. They know about us. They want money, Allison. A lot of money, he spills out. My stomach churns. How did they find him? How did they? I trail off, the enormity of it crushing me. I don't know. Could Mark have someone tailing me? Or I don't even know who would do this. Jake sounds close to tears. His desperation fuels my own, but I force myself to think. What did your brother say? To meet tomorrow. A secluded spot outside town. I told him I'd bring cash. Don't go, I snap back. It's dangerous. We need to go to the police. You're kidding, right? Cops? They'll expose our affair. Besides, this isn't some random mugging. Whoever's behind it is too connected. They'll know if we go to the authorities. His words hit uncomfortably close to home. There's a twisted logic in it, one that speaks to the kind of people we might be dealing with. So, what do we do then? Just give them money. I can't even get that kind of cash, I say, panic bleeding into my voice. The silence on the line stretches. It's the unspoken truth. Neither of us has any answers. I'll meet them. I need to try and reason with them. But you, Allison, Jake's voice trails off, a mixture of fear and reluctant acceptance. I know I need to disappear. I say it hollowly, the words hanging in the air like a death sentence. Where do I even go? How do I explain this to the kids? Mark's footsteps coming up the stairs snap me back into the present. I slam the laptop shut, my movements frantic. Just another day in my perfect crumbling world. My fingers tremble as I open the cabinet under the bathroom sink. My emergency stash, not the first aid kit, but the other one. The bundle of wrinkled cash I painstakingly collected. Birthday money from my parents I never spent. Forgotten checks from distant relatives. It's pitiful. Nowhere near what Jake's blackmailer demanded, but it's all I have. Pathetic. That word circles my mind like a vulture. It applies to almost every aspect of my life right now. It's pathetic that this is the best I can do. It's pathetic that I even entertain the idea that running away was a solution, let alone a practical one. Yesterday I called in sick to the soup kitchen. I spent the entire day packing a single small suitcase and making heartbreaking to-do lists for Mark. School pickup schedules, the vet's number, reminders about the allergies. It was like penning instructions for my own erasure. Mark was strangely solicitous, asking about my doctor's appointment and suggesting takeout for dinner. His guilt, or more likely his desire to regain control, is suffocating. I'm starting to see why people in these situations just cave. Give in to the blackmail. It'd be easier. Maybe I'd get some peace. A few months before the next demand, the next escalation. But the thought of rewarding this monster, this shadowy figure destroying me from afar. No. There's a flicker of defiant anger left in me, and I'm going to cling to it with all I've got. Beth calls. She's been relentless, a lifeline in this self-imposed isolation. You okay? Any word from Jake? Yeah, I force myself to say it out loud. Maybe then it'll feel more real. I gave him the money, all I could find. He's meeting them today. There's a beat of silence. Allison, that's crazy. This won't end. You know that, right? Beth's voice is sharp, frustration bleeding through. She's not wrong. What else could I do? Sit and wait for them to turn up on our doorstep? At least this way, maybe Jake can figure something out. I try to sound convincing, but even to my own ears, it rings hollow. Beth sighs. I'm heading over. This whole thing is a mess, but you shouldn't deal with it alone. Her tone softens slightly. She's a true friend, sometimes to a fault. Her loyalty has never wavered, not even now when I'm at my least deserving. When Beth arrives, my kitchen counter is transformed into a makeshift war room. My laptop is open, displaying maps of the secluded area where Jake's meeting is supposed to take place. Beside it, Jake's cryptic text with the location details. I've been staring at it so long, the words blur and warp. What about Grace, your investigator? Can she trace the phone? Beth asks after surveying the scene. No luck. Whoever's behind the blackmail is good. It's either a burner or routed through so many proxies it's pointless. I wave a hand in frustration. I'd half hoped Grace might uncover something, anything to give a name to this faceless torment. Beth bites her lip. She knows I'm out of options, that I'm placing an impossible amount of faith in Jake and his ability to manage a situation he's ill-equipped to handle, yet she doesn't voice the obvious. We drive. It's the middle of the day, the road's busy with ordinary, unremarkable lives. I should be at school pickup, wrangling the kids into the car for soccer practice. Instead, I'm about to witness the fallout of one disastrous decision, its consequences rippling outwards in ways I can't even predict. The area Jake described is exactly as sinister as it sounded. Abandoned warehouses, overgrown lots, the relics of some failed industrial project. We park a safe distance away, using binoculars to scan the desolate landscape. Do you see him? I try to keep my voice steady, but the binoculars tremble in my hands. There, a flicker of movement outside a crumbling, half-built structure. It's Jake. My heart sinks. He's alone. My hands squeeze the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turn white. We're too far away to see clearly, but the tension between Jake and the figures looming over him is unmistakable. One, burly and menacing. Another, smaller, concealed beneath a bulky hoodie. Neither faces us. A calculated move, likely intentional from whoever set this up. Jake's an idiot, Beth mutters beside me. He should have never gone alone. A surge of guilt washes over me. Yes, it's a stupid risk, but he's doing this because of me. Because I was too cowardly to face the consequences of my actions. My stomach twists as I consider if this goes wrong. Jake might pay the price for my mistakes. We watch helplessly. The figures approach Jake, forming a semicircle. One of them gestures threateningly. They're too far for us to hear the words, but the intent is clear. It's enough to break the fragile dam holding back my panic. I can't just sit here. I almost shout, my voice raw. I fumble for the car door handle, but Beth grabs my arm. Allison, stop. We'll make everything worse. Look. Her sudden urgency forces me to focus. Jake is holding out the envelope with the cash. The exchange happens quickly. Money for silence. The figures turn to leave. It seems anticlimactic. A tense, terrible moment hanging in the air, and then it might just be over. Relief washes over me, but it quickly curdles into suspicion. This feels too easy. My tormentor, whoever they are, enjoys playing games. Would they really just take the money and disappear? The answer comes a moment later. Jake is on the ground, doubled over. One of the figures, the burly one, kicks him viciously. The other stands by, almost casually, as if this is part of the agreed-upon deal. I feel sick watching the assault unfold helplessly from afar. Oh my God, he's going to kill him. Beth's voice is a terrified whisper. I don't stop to think. There's only a primal instinct taking over. I throw the car into reverse, slamming my foot on the gas pedal. The tires squeal as I tear out of our hiding spot, aiming straight for the scene. Beth screams my name, but it's lost beneath the roar of the engine. I see the assailants scramble as the car hurtles towards them, but my focus is solely on Jake. I have to get him out of there. I can only imagine the thoughts racing through those men's minds. A surprise attack. A woman scorned coming to the rescue? I prey on whatever sliver of rationality they have left that it's enough to make them retreat before things turn truly deadly. The chaos happens in a blur. Screeching tires, shouts, Jake scrambling towards the car, Beth's panicked voice in my ear, dust and fear clogging my throat as I gun the engine and swing the car around in a whiplash turn. I don't see the men again. Jake stumbles into the passenger seat, clutching his side and gasping for breath. We speed away, my heart pounding a frantic tattoo against my ribs. Are you okay? Please tell me you're okay. I babble, glancing at Jake. He's bruised, bleeding slightly, but alive. That's the only thing that matters right now. My hands still shake from adrenaline hours later, driving Jake to a discreet urgent care clinic. My thoughts were a chaotic jumble. We concocted a story about a mugging gone wrong, vague enough to explain the bruises without arousing too much suspicion. We didn't stick around long enough for questions. Get some rest, I tell him, as I drop him off in a dimly lit part of town. I'll check in later, stay off your phone for a while. He nods numbly, the fight gone out of him. We both know this is far from over. Back at home, an eerie normalcy descends. It's like the eye of a hurricane, a temporary lull before the true destruction. Mark fusses around me, a strange mix of anger and misplaced concern. He questions my erratic behavior, my unexplained trip to the doctor. I offer short replies, feigning exhaustion. He doesn't buy it entirely, but plays along for now. Sandra, ever the opportunist, swoops in under the guise of supporting the family. She cooks, cleans, casts suspicious glances my way. The kids look on, a mixture of confusion and relief. Domestic order is restored, even if the foundation it rests on is rotten to the core. My phone buzzes. It's Grace. I rush to the bathroom, locking the door behind me as if that offers any real privacy. You need to see this. Grace's voice crackles through the speaker. She's usually unflappable, but there's an urgency in her tone now that sends a shiver down my spine. Tell me, I almost whisper, bracing myself. I traced the blackmail emails further than I thought possible. Multiple redirects, dummy servers, the works. But they slipped up, left a trace. The IP resolved to a residential address. My pulse quickens. Whose address? Your mother-in-law's. The words slam against me like a physical blow. No, it can't be. Sure, Sandra hates me, but this is something else entirely. Her hatred is petty, vindictive. This calculated torment, the threats against Jake, the connection to Mark's shady dealings? It doesn't add up. Are you sure? I managed to squeak out. There has to be a mistake. Positive. No room for error. I'll send you the full report. The call ends abruptly. I stare at my reflection in the mirror. Is this what I've become? A stranger to myself, trapped in a house of horrors, surrounded by monsters disguised as loved ones. Betrayal cuts deeper than any blackmail threat. I feel a white-hot rage consume me, not towards Sandra, but towards Mark. His lies, whatever darkness he's hidden from everyone, all of it facilitated my blind complicity. Maybe Sandra is my tormentor, motivated by a twisted desire to punish him through me. It's almost laughable. I'm caught in the crossfire of a war I never saw coming. Beth arrives later that evening, armed with takeout and a bottle of wine. I don't even try to protest. We sit on the couch in my perfectly manicured living room, surrounded by the trappings of a life I no longer recognize. So, what's the play? Do you tell Mark? This can't continue, Beth says after a long, contemplative sip of her wine. I don't know. I stare at my reflection in the wine glass, the liquid swirling inside. It's not a question of if, but when. Everything will shatter. For the first time, I see not only the wreckage of my life, but also the possibility of rebuilding amidst the ashes. I wake to the sound of rain. The steady drumming against the cabin's roof should be soothing. Instead, it mirrors the relentless chaos raging in my head. I spent the night tossing and turning, my mind a tangled web of accusations, revelations, and desperate plans. I replay Grace's report over and over in my head. Sandra's accounts, the money trail, it all points to Jake's mysterious cousin. I still can't wrap my brain around it. Jake, my lover, turning into another villain in this twisted story? Beth texts with an update. More news coverage. Mark making public pleas for my return. Photos of the kids plastered on local newsstands. Pawns in a desperate bid for sympathy. Sandra, surprisingly, is silent. Is it calculated strategy, or did I misjudge her role in all this? My phone buzzes. It's him. Jake. We need to talk. His voice is a raspy whisper, filled with desperation and something else. Fear. Where are you? I try to keep my voice steady, but a tremor of anticipation runs through me. The end of the blackmail, or another trap. The park. The one we used to meet. Please, Allison, I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. His voice trails off, a plea hanging heavy in the air. Intuition, or is it foolishness, pushes me to agree. Despite everything, there's a flicker of hope. Could this be a way out? Could Jake hold the answers, not as a perpetrator, but as an unexpected ally? The rain has stopped, leaving the park eerily empty. The swings creak in the breeze, a chilling soundtrack to my solitude. I perch on a bench, scanning the paths for any sign of Jake. There. A familiar figure emerges from the thinning mist. My heart thuds against my ribs as he approaches. Jake looks disheveled, haunted. He collapses onto the bench next to me, burying his head in his hands. I'm so sorry, he chokes out. For all of it, he explains, his voice gaining strength as he pours out the sordid truth. His cousin, a low-level grifter caught in mounting debt. The blackmail scheme that spiraled out of control. Not a grand plan, but a desperate act fueled by greed. Jake was meant to be little more than a pawn, a believable target for my affections. He never dreamt it'd escalate to threats of physical harm, or that my tormentor would turn her sights on him as well. Claire. I say her name aloud, a bitter taste in my mouth. She used you. Jake nods, shame etched across his face. She knew about my debts, knew my weaknesses. Promised a quick fix, a way out. Said you were an easy mark. A lonely rich housewife? My hands curl into fists. Betrayal slices through me, from Claire, from Jake, from my own blindness. Mark has to know, I mutter, more to myself than to Jake. It's a desperate act of self-preservation now. Mark's secrets are my shield, a weapon to wield against this woman who wants to destroy us both. Are you sure? Jake's voice holds a flicker of hope, a selfish desire to keep his own sins hidden. It sparks a flicker of disgust within me. We're all ruined anyway, I say grimly. Let's at least try to control how the wreckage falls. And with that, a plan forms. A risky, desperate plan with no guarantee of success. But what choice do I have, other than to remain a pawn in someone else's vicious game? My hands feel clammy as I push open the heavy door of the police station. The sterile lights, the smell of stale coffee, it all brings back a visceral wave of nausea. I was here just days ago, but I feel like a different person. Stronger, hardened, stripped of the naivete that got me into this nightmare. Detective Carter greets me, his expression a careful mix of weariness and something approaching grudging respect. Mrs. Thorne? He nods curtly, gesturing toward an interrogation room. Even my name feels foreign now, a relic of a life that no longer exists. He lays it out. The charges leveled against Mark, the damning evidence, Claire's confession outlining the web of deceit. He spares me the gory details, but it's clear Mark's fall will be swift and complete. Sandra's fate is less certain, her role more calculated, hidden behind shell companies and plausible deniability. Questions follow, relentless and sharp, digging into my affair with Jake, the depths of my willful blindness. There's judgment in the detective's eyes, but also a flicker of understanding. A woman caught in her own gilded cage, fighting for survival with the only weapons she knew. Walking out of the station, I don't feel vindication, just a dull exhaustion. There's no winning here, only degrees of loss. I head straight to Mark's sprawling office, the place that was once the symbol of his success, now a target for media vultures and bankruptcy lawyers. He's hunched over his desk, a broken figure. The hatred radiating from him is palpable, but for the first time, I don't cower from it. How could you? He spits out. I gave you everything. Everything was a lie, Mark. A house of cards built on stolen money and other people's ruin, I retort, my voice steady. There's no room for his self-pity, not when my own life is in shambles. The fight leaves him, replaced by a bitter resignation. I watch him sign papers I only half understand, legal jargon that translates into a future far less lavish than the one I was promised. There's a small satisfaction in seeing his world crumble, a sliver of justice in his downfall. Beth is my lifeline through the ensuing chaos. We spend countless nights poring over documents, deciphering legal strategies. She's both my lawyer and my rock, a constant in a world devoid of any familiar ground. My children, their faces haunt my sleepless nights. Too young to understand, old enough to sense the brokenness. Shared custody becomes a battleground, Mark wielding their hurt as ammunition against me. It's a pain unlike any I've ever known, the guilt of my choices cutting deepest now. The volunteering starts as an act of desperation, a need to fill the empty hours, to feel some kind of purpose besides untangling a lifetime of deceit. The victim support group is where I end up, women and men, their eyes mirroring my own haunted desperation. Their stories unfold in hushed tones in sterile meeting rooms, stolen inheritances, retirement funds gambled away, betrayals that shatter families. Listening, I see the human cost of Mark's greed. I help where I can, small gestures against an ocean of suffering. There's no redemption in it, only a desperate grasping for a way to make amends, to rebuild myself from the inside out. 1 year later, sitting in a crowded coffee shop, I see him. Jake. He looks older, thinner, a shadow of the man I thought I knew. I freeze, unsure if I should hide, run, or face him head on. He notices me, a flicker of recognition, hesitation. Then he walks over. Can we talk? He asks, his voice hoarse. Awkward silences stretch between stilted apologies. Shared regrets are spilled alongside bitter truths. We dissect the wreckage of our choices, knowing neither of us deserves absolution, perhaps not even forgiveness. As he gets up to leave, a strange understanding settles between us. There's no promise of a second chance, of rekindled passion, only a shared acknowledgement of the storm we both weathered and the uncertain paths that lie ahead. My walk home is solitary. The future is still hazy, fraught with custody battles, uncertain finances, and the lingering sting of betrayal. But for the first time in a long while, I feel a sliver of hope. Not for a fairy tale ending, but for something real, something built on the shattered remains of the life I once knew. Because at the end of it all, that's all I have left.